episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. It is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime on trending criminal cases. And this has been getting tons of airtime and headlines since Sean Diddy Combs' arrest back in just September of 2024. Usually we're waiting around 2 or 3 years, but the feds don't mess around. It is jury selection in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, which is expected to last about 8 weeks, and they're trying to whittle it down to 18 jurors, 12 regular and 6 alternates, and that is what they are working on at the federal courthouse in downtown Manhattan on 500 Pearl Street, and I'm hoping to be there Sunday and bring you opening statements, which are expected on Monday. So today we're kind of going to set the proverbial table here, tell you what's going on with jury selection and what to expect and what could be a star-studded trial in lower Manhattan, which would be fitting since that's a place where a lot of stars live and like to be seen. Best guest today, a new one and a very good one. You've got Vinoo Varghese. He is one of the nation's top white-collar and criminal defense attorneys. He is a former prosecutor as well, and he is a visiting faculty member at Harvard Law. You may have heard of it, Harvard Law School's Trial Advocacy Workshop. He is a top 100 national trial lawyer. He is ranked as a New York Metro super lawyer, and the list goes on. Here she is. Look at this. I'm going to bring in Vinoo. There you go. Next up, you've got Natalie, the lawyer chick and attorney. She is a professional loudmouth. Her words, not mine, a YouTuber. So she is tortured like me, a political enthusiast. That's extra torture. A feminist. I won't comment on that at all. Liberal, no politics at STS. A wife and a defender of the public. There you go. Welcome to Natalie, the lawyer chick, not to be confused with the lawyer you know. Josh Ritter. A good friend of mine, a former LA prosecutor of the year, not just any prosecutor, talking prosecutor of the year. He is a current criminal defense attorney, and he is host of Courtroom Confidential, one of the hottest new true crime podcasts in all of the universe, in the entire world. So this is interesting. Vinoo, first of all, thank you, and thank you for being here. We were talking for literally 2 seconds off camera before getting cracking here, and you just happened to mention in passing, which is a bad idea since I'm a recovering journalist, and you said, hey, I saw Diddy at the MDC, at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. What was the circumstance, and what was the interaction like?
So I have a client who is in the same protective unit as him, and they are bunkmates, or they're in the same room. I think there's a few of them. So the first time I went there, Diddy was there. The president of Honduras was there. Sam Bankman-Fried was there. It was a interesting group, and it was just me. One of Diddy's lawyers, it wasn't Agnifilo, it wasn't the lead lawyer, and the attorney for the president of Honduras, and Bankman-Fried and one of his lawyers. So there were 4 rooms. So that part of the MDC is actually pretty decent up compared to the rest. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of horror shows and things that have gone on. It's been well documented, but that area is actually pretty decent as far as for lawyers to meet with their clients and stuff, because there's not that many people there. No rush on rooms. But Diddy was very pleasant. Him and my client, his name is in the paper, Christopher Terranova. He's awaiting sentencing as a police officer convicted of some of the similar stuff to Diddy, and crimes involving minors, and he's awaiting sentencing. And it's it was an interesting day when I saw him. So
Yeah, and Vinoo, I know you do a lot of work, obviously downtown, and that's where your office is on Wall Street. Some people may have heard of Wall Street. The judge here is Arun Subramanian. Subramanian. Do you know him? Do you know what kind of judge he is? What's the word on the street? I guess
he's relatively new. I think he came from that office. The problem, for any defendant in that courthouse or in the courthouse across the river in Brooklyn is that the majority, and this is true in state court, but particularly in federal court, the majority of judges are ex-prosecutors, former federal prosecutors. So it's even though, he's doesn't looks a little different. He looks like, where he and I are the similar skin tone. It's the same boys club. Right. And so and the problem is that the guys that are in this boys club, they speak a different language than the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And so their views on what's proper and admissible are different. And unfortunately, they are backed up by the appellate courts, and particularly the one overlooking the Manhattan Federal Court. The Second Circuit is, it's too often a rubber stamp. And too few cases get to the Supreme Court, for meaningful review. So most of the law is handled at this level, at the district court level. The intermediate appellate court, Second Circuit, often overlooks a lot of things that prosecutors do, and they overstep. And they get away with it. And that's part of the problem. He's a guy that I've been looking at the docket and looking at his decisions, and one of the big things is in sex crimes cases or allegations of sex crimes is how much similar, what you call prior bad act, how many things are you going to let in that of other bad things that they say Diddy did. And it looks like, just looking at the docket, he's let in a lot of stuff. So that's already a problem for Diddy. And then the biggest problem in federal court is that the lawyers don't pick the jurors. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the judge gets to pick the jurors. And the judge could allow the defense attorneys to pick the jurors, but they rarely do. I was fortunate enough to have more than once a federal judge allow me to pick a jury, but generally you don't get to. And it's a real problem because you don't have meaningful interaction, and these judges sit over and it goes, and when they express hesitation, like, I think I can do it. To me, if somebody says I think and they're not clear, then that person you should be able to further explore. But judges will sit up from up top and look down and say, hey, but if I tell you you need to follow the law, will you follow the law? Yes, right. Most people are too nervous to say otherwise. So that's the problem here. Lawyers don't get to pick the jurors. So the deck is so stacked against Diddy right from the get-go because his case is brought in federal court.
Yeah, and there's some interesting potential jurors. I'm going to get to that in a moment. Vinoo, doesn't bother me, but the COE, I know you're new to the show. She is the chief of everything, otherwise known as the executive producer, otherwise known as my wife, and getting a little audio feedback. So she's asking if you might be able to take the earbuds out. So I'll let you. I'm just going to mute you for a minute. I don't know if that's going to help or not, but we'll go clockwise here. Natalie, that means you're up next. I hate even asking this question because this is a criminal case, obviously, with a lot of victims. So I don't want to make this sound like, we're about to be at a Broadway theater, watching a show. But what are you anticipating, the most, I suppose, in this upcoming trial? What are you looking for as, through your lens as a YouTuber, an attorney, and someone who's outspoken? And we're not hearing you, or I'm not hearing you. Let's. All right, hang on. We'll come to you. She is miming for us, and Vinoo, I'm going to unmute you here. But Josh Ritter, this is interesting. I did not actually realize this. I know that the judge is doing a lot of the line of questioning here. That is for sure. But I didn't realize that the judge is actually picking the jurors. You're a prosecutor, former prosecutor, and now criminal defense attorney. I mean, Vinoo is saying, and I would tend to agree with him, it's got to be a huge advantage, I would think, for the government as opposed to the defense. And again, we'll get into some of these. So your thoughts on this?
On the jurors, on the attorneys not actually picking
Correct
the jurors. When Vinoo was saying that, I do not have a lot of experience in federal court. So when Vinoo was explaining that, my palms are still sweaty thinking about it. That is very unnerving to me, because of what Vinoo said so eloquently. Is a lot of this is about, kind of creating first impressions with jurors. Yes, you're talking to them about the case. Yes, you're trying to find out about bias, but you're also trying to, as cleverly as you can, kind of maybe set some of the themes that you hope to develop throughout your case. And you want them to kind of like you. So you're having a little bit of interaction with jurors, at least in state court. That's a lot of what's taking place. And what will happen is that somebody might, in a moment of comfort, expose some bias, expose some preconceived notions that they're bringing into court. And you'd like to explore and develop that, because maybe this is not the right trial for them. Maybe they should sit on a different type of case. And of course, if a judge stares at you from their high little podium there, and they've got their black robe on, and they say, "But if I tell you to follow the law, will you follow the law?" What person is going to say, "No, Your Honor, I'm not. I'm so ingrained with my own feelings, I'm not going to follow the law"? And this happens all the time, even in state court, where they'll say, "Absolutely, I do." Well, you may have a shot at getting a for-cause challenge out of that person, but at least as the attorneys, you also know that's not somebody that's helpful to me, and at least you feel like you can challenge them and not have them sit on your jury. But now, the nightmares that Vinoo's giving me, it sounds like those types of people may very well make it onto this jury. So that is unnerving, because end of the day, both sides are just trying to eliminate those people that just shouldn't sit on this jury, that they, maybe they believe every word out of the mouth of a police officer. That's not somebody that you want for the defense. Or maybe they don't trust police officers at all and don't believe a word they say, and that's not somebody you want for the prosecution. And those types of folks just really shouldn't sit on the jury. What you're left with, hopefully, at the end of the day, is a bunch of people who don't have drastic feelings either way and might be able to sit and view this case with objective eyes. But, I don't know. I mean, listen, federal court's been doing it their way for a very long time, and I doubt our podcast is going to change their mind on that. But it is disturbing to hear that that's what the attorneys are going up against.
Yeah, it's time for these feds also to bring out the cameras and start showing the public what's going on in these trials. But Sean Diddy Combs' defense team is a powerful one. It's this guy Mark Agnifilo, whose wife is representing Luigi Mangione. Tenny Geragos, you may know the last name. That is Mark Geragos' daughter. And I have not one, but two clips of Mark Geragos that the COE found that we're going to play in a moment. This guy, Brian Steele, who represented Young Thug, is another member of the team. They're strong attorneys. There's a woman named Nicole Westmoreland who just joined the team. And there was a plea deal offered up, a last-minute plea deal. And Natalie, I'm just going to go back to you. Hopefully we've got your audio now, but the terms of this potential plea deal have not been disclosed. I don't know what the terms are, but Diddy said, thanks, but no thanks. And this was, I think, last week, kind of a last minute 11th hour deal. I assume you're not surprised by that. Do you have any guess? And I know it would just be a guess as to what could have been offered.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, great. I definitely think it probably would have been a plea to one of the more severe counts, the racketeering or something, but then with a lessened sentence where, hey, you're going to get out to see your daughters grow up. You're going to get out in this amount of time, you're not going to get, thrown away for a really, really long time. I think that's what it would have been. For optics reasons, I don't think they would have compromised and given him like a lesser charge of just a simple assault or something. I think it had to be one of the top counts, but with much less time than if he had lost at trial.
Alicia Elliott here with a super chat. With the judge picking the jury, how does that play out for a fair trial? Vinoo, I'm going to let you take this one. Is there any way that it could be an appellate issue down the road? I mean, this is the way business is done here, so you're shaking your head no, but why don't you broaden out your the context here a little bit? Oh, and I have you. I'm sorry. I'm going to unmute you there. Go ahead.
Okay. It should be an appellate issue, but sadly it's not. This is authorized by Congress, and Congress under the statute allows judges to pick juries, and it gives a judge an option to allow their attorneys to do so. But most of them don't, especially the ex-prosecutors. They believe that they can pick a jury, fairly, but they do so with the idea of doing it very quickly. I mean, it's done so fast, you can be fair and impartial, sure. Yep, next, basically. If somebody does raise their hands and you see it, you'll see people in say things like, I don't trust prosecutors, because they know that's going to get them off the jury, right? So, this is the problem here is how many people, the kind of people you want on the jury are ones that have analytical minds, the people who actually aren't beholden and don't give the government the benefit of the doubt, right? Most people believe that, if a person is sitting in that chair where a defendant sits, that person is probably did something wrong, deserving to be there. And so, you're seeing in some of the news articles about what some of the things that people have said. Some person got off because she saw a documentary about Diddy, and somebody else called the video that was, that's made the news media of the assault of Cassie, that it was damning evidence. But short of things like that, people are going to be gone, and then that reduces the amount of things. So there are only in this thing 10 peremptory challenges. The government gets 6, the defense gets 10. And when you go through these, and they use this method called the struck method, which basically sets it up so that one panel of 50s, I forget the exact number, it's like 56, comes in, and basically you get your jury from that first panel of people that come in. So it's a really sad system, and state courts definitely do this better. But unfortunately, unless there's an act of Congress, or if one day Justice Gorsuch, can convince the other members of the Supreme Court that this is a, denying a defendant his due process, short of that, unfortunately, no appellate reversals on that issue alone.
Yeah. Ritter, you're in LA, but Natalie's younger, so I'm going to go to her on the on the pop whatever questions, your pop culture questions. Please. Yeah. So Natalie, there's a long list of celebrities that could potentially, possibly appear in this hip hop stars trial. They include Michael B. Jordan, not to be confused with the basketball player. This is the actor. Mike Myers, rappers Kid Cudi, Kanye West, Destiny's Child, Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child, the rapper Young Miami. All these people could potentially be witnesses or called. Well, they all very unlikely, but how does that change the dynamic of this trial? I mean, they've got to be grateful that there's no cameras, but you can guarantee that TMZ will be staked out, and people and all these other, outlets. But how's that going to change, I guess, the landscape of the trial, if at all?
I think that it's going to put both the prosecution and the defense on high alert, especially during this jury selection process, to make sure that there are people on the jury that are not only not familiar with the defendant, but not familiar with all of these extremely famous witnesses. This is very odd. Sometimes you have that your client is a famous person or a person that's become infamous, but not everyone involved in the trial, right? So I think they're really going to have to look out for that. And then I also think it's going to be interesting because these celebrities are all going to come with their own lawyers. They're going to try to avoid answering as many questions as possible. They're going to be difficult to question, difficult to rein in. They come with these big personalities. So I just really do think that it raises the stakes on the factual way in which the case must be proven, and then also on the background behind the scenes parts of the case, like when it comes to the jury selection.
Yeah, someone's asking if it's Mike Myers as in Austin Powers. If you follow this man's music career and pop culture, connecting the dots is easy. Mike Myers made a reference about Sean Combs and Austin Powers. They were friendly way back in the day. I hope they weren't too friendly, but we're going to maybe, who knows if that comes up. So, by the way, in other news, that's our original case. It was announced today that Donna Adelson, her trial is now set to start August 19th. And could last through September 5th. Of course, it's going to start right when Kohberger is going to start, but I think I'll be able to get out to Kohberger for openings and then get back to Donna and then maybe head back out for Kohberger's closings. But and also tomorrow morning, Shanna Gardner, accused in an eerily similar murder for hire trial. She's back in court in Jacksonville. We're going to take that live at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Josh Ritter, I guess one of the headlines yesterday at the start of jury selection was sort of the stunning appearance of Sean Diddy Combs. He looked completely different. There are only sketch artists in the courtroom, and there's one, I believe her name is Jane Goodman. I have to double check that. I'm 99% sure. And she has been a long time sketch artist. She drew these. And this is what he's wearing. This is a right out of the Luigi Mangione playbook, and the husband and wife are the respective attorneys here. But he's wearing a sweater. Kind of has a professorial look, and they're not allowed hair dye. I thought the guy never went gray, Ritter. I thought he had magical celebrity superpowers, but apparently he is gray. For those who know him and are picked in this jury to be on this jury, I think it's going to be fairly shocking to them when they actually see him, because he's going to look nothing like what he looks like in quote unquote the magazines and on television. How does this factor in, if at all?
Yeah, prison is rough, man. It takes a toll. You can see that. I wish we actually had photographs, because I imagine, yeah, he is not looking well. I mean, your health deteriorates, and then the tremendous stress that he's under. I mean, you know, part of this whole trial is going to be about his lifestyle, right? And how much of his lifestyle can these jurors wrap their heads around or not? Well, this is a guy who went from the type of lifestyle where, you know, nearly his every whim was answered by somebody in his entourage or staff, to now being told, you know, when he can take a shower or when he can't, and what food he's going to eat that night. And if he doesn't like it, then don't eat it, kind of a deal. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, that believe me, I'm not trying to do a woe is me thing with P. Diddy here, but I'm just saying that is a dramatic shift in lifestyle for this guy. So it's no wonder that that's reflected in his physical appearance. What's interesting about what you asked, though, is that if there are jurors who were familiar with him that do remain on the jury, and, you know, don't have any preconceived notions about this, they might, there could be a chance that they might look upon him more sympathetically, because that does not reflect the person that prosecutors are going to be showing in the videos, right? Prosecutors are going to be showing this guy, you know, showers of champagne, you know, pool parties, white parties, the Hamptons and everything else. And instead out walks this guy, you know, with a Mr. Rogers sweater and gray hair, and it might make them feel a little bit differently about that gentleman sitting in court and whether or not he is in fact responsible for all these things. So I don't know. It could, you know, I am a firm believer that jurors are constantly paying attention to and making assessments of the defendant in court, and their physical appearance is one of those things they're looking at.
Yeah. Again, we've got some sound. I'm going to play Mark Geragos in just a moment. We have Diddy himself. I will play that as well. Let's get into the jury questions, and then we'll get into the potential defense here, and that is sort of stunning. Just to give you a little teaser there, it is that he was living a promiscuous swingers lifestyle and he was under a haze from the drugs. We'll hold that off for a little bit and get into Vinoo. You're the one who let us all know that the judge here is picking the jurors, where the jurors here were repeatedly asked if they or a family member or friend have been a victim of SA or sexual harassment or DV, and whether they or a loved one have been charged or accused of the crimes. And this is interesting to me because I covered the Sarah Boone trial. She's the woman who was convicted of murdering her boyfriend by zipping him into a suitcase where he couldn't breathe. And I was there for jury selection on that trial. And they asked the same question about, are you a victim? And a woman raised her hand. And my immediate thought, because I'm not that smart, was, well, this woman's going to be sympathetic to the defendant. And then I quickly found out the exact opposite, because she would know who a quote unquote real victim is. And she, Sarah Boone, was not a quote unquote real victim, according to people who watched the trial, knew her, and knew of her actions. So it actually benefited the government to have someone that had been involved in a case like this or been affected by SA or DV. Your thoughts on this? Is the government looking for someone here who's potentially a victim of this as well?
They always are. And my view as a criminal defense attorney, I'd be, I definitely would like to hear the thoughts of the panelists on this, is that you want that this isn't the case for somebody who was a victim of either domestic violence or sexual assault. Whatever it is, you don't want that person on the jury. And, these judges, and I was just looking at Arun Subramanian's profile. I've actually met him. I realized we're both, he was honored by the South Asian Bar. I'm a member of that bar association. So, to make it simpler, the Brown Lawyers Bar Association. So he was honored one time. So I've met him, and actually he's not a former federal prosecutor, which is good. He was a Biden appointee. He's a new judge. And I was just reading some of his comments about trying to hurry things up. We're wasting time here because, there are people going to have hardships, and that should have been taken care of. That's in his domain to figure out, okay, who's not going to be able to serve. But those issues, so when somebody says, has ever been a victim, the way that it's almost always done in any trial is that the prospective juror comes up to the bench, and they put on a noise muffling machine, a white noise machine, so everyone else doesn't hear it. And that person, then the court reporter and the parties go up to the side, and they then the person tells what happens. And it's done, one, to protect the prospective juror's privacy and not cause embarrassment, but also for another reason, not to get other people who may hear an answer say, you know what, maybe I don't want to be on this jury. And so judges do that to keep from basically poisoning the jury pool with giving somebody an idea for an out to get out of jury duty. So the problem, again, is that too many of these judges will be like, but, can you put your experience out of thing and judge the evidence fairly? And if they say yes, under federal law and case law, that's sufficient. And you don't really get further follow-up. The judge can allow further follow-up. The judge can also allow a lawyer to ask questions to that prospective juror at sidebar. But if that person says, yes, I think so, and then the judge gets that juror, he or she, to say, yes, I will follow the law, then you got to burn one of those very precious peremptory challenges, and you won't be able to strike that person for cause. So, we were talking about it earlier, but you have unlimited challenge for cause. So if a juror can say, if you can get a juror to admit a certain type of bias, which you can if you can talk to them, but in federal court, you can't talk to them. You basically get very few challenges for cause, and you're going to have to burn a very precious peremptory challenge.
Interesting. Ben G here. I went to high school with Sean Combs, class of 87, same class as I was. Mount St. Michael's Academy, an all-boys Catholic high school in the Bronx. Sad to see what he's become and the pain he's caused. We've had A.B. Butler on, who knew Sean Combs in the days that Sean was a 14-year-old paper delivery boy. Shared some photos. But Ben G., surviving the survivor at Gmail. I'm going to be up in New York for the trial. Would love to connect and maybe get you on STS for a little inside perspective on what he was like back in high school. I think there's an insatiable appetite for this case. Would like to get your take. Natalie, there's a question.
I was just there. Sorry to interrupt. I was just there on Sunday at Mount St. Michael's. My kid plays travel ball.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
It was a league tournament, and they had a field. So I didn't realize Diddy went there.
We're talking baseball or hoops?
Baseball.
Nice.
Baseball.
Very nice. I don't want to brag, but my kid's in T-ball. He's 5, turning 6, and hit a triple the other day. But I don't want to. It's apples and oranges. Grand
my
jury
kid's hitting 450 at 13 and under.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Both my kids are actually hitting 450. 429 for my 10-year-old, 450 for my 13, 14-year-old.
Vinoo, I'm going to have to pick your brain after this and figure out how to get my kid up there.
It's MLB or bust in my house. My kids are not going to be lawyers.
I was going to say, it's their way out of working on Wall Street as an attorney, but my kid's getting putting time out for being under 450 when I get home. He's going to have to go sit in the corner, I think. Josh Ritter. Natalie. I'm coming to you. That's what I meant to come to. So I saw a comment in the chat here that said, I want to be picked for a grand jury. I've never been picked for a grand jury or a jury pool in general, and I don't know anyone that had. So how rare is it? I'll tell you, I lived in DC for a while, and I still get notices from DC. I feel like there's 7 people who live in the district, and there are so many courts there, so they're constantly. So if you want to get called for jury duty, go to DC. But yeah, I'm in Miami. I haven't gotten called for jury duty in 5 years. How simple or tough or likely is it that you get called?
Yeah, it depends all on population density, kind of like what you're bringing up, because I know when I lived on the eastern shore of Maryland, Salisbury, I did get called for jury duty one time. It's a smaller population. But now that I live in this county, which is a larger population, I've been here since 2018, and I have not got called for jury duty, which I think is very interesting. So I know I'm qualified. In my state, it's that you have to either be registered to vote or have a license, either one or the other. And that will qualify you to be able to vote as long as you don't have a certain disqualifying conviction. So I would love my opportunity to step up for jury duty one day, but it's never come my way. So I'm thinking it's kind of getting rare, depending on where you are.
What's crazy is I've heard a bunch of attorneys tell me that they've gotten called, which I just don't understand. But that's, I guess, a whole other conversation. But Josh,
I was just called for state jury duty. And they didn't want me, there was a criminal case. But federal jury duty, I've never been called for federal jury duty. I've been called every 6 years or whatever it is. I get my notice, I go to state court. But I've yet to be called for federal jury duty. And I've lived, in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and I've been, registered voter for the entire time, yet to be called.
Yeah, well, look, LeBron James could not make the Met Gala last night, but it appears he was on a grand jury. No, this is LeBron James. She was on a grand jury for 4 months. Josh Ritter, back to it's not fun. Back to these juror questions. And again, the judge, if you're joining us late, is the one picking the jury panel for this Sean Diddy Combs trial. They were also asking the judge was asking the potential jurors, Josh, about their feelings on law enforcement experiences with the government, and the defense had a series of questions that they gave the judge to ask to describe. One of them is to describe the music that they like and their opinions about hip hop and the rap music industry. The defense team's proposed questionnaire also suggested that they wanted to know if jurors are open-minded to alternative sexual lifestyles, which will bridge us T-Suze, I hope your ears are earmuffed for this one. But Josh Ritter, interesting questions here. You know, this reminds me now of Charlie Adelson's trial, because he was tried in Tallahassee, and they brought in this high-powered New York City jury consultant, Josh Dubin, and all the Tallahassee criminal defense attorneys say that it was a fatal flaw because it kept them from bonding with the potential jurors during voir dire. And this is what Vinoo's saying. I mean, this is just tough all around because the judge is picking these people, and essentially you're just handing the judge questions. I guess it's a two-part question, which you sort of answered one of them, just going back to the fact that you can't really schmooze. You can't get a read on these jurors. Is that what was making your palms sweat earlier?
Yeah. And, you know, what Vinoo said about these judges, I don't know what it is about putting on a black robe. I don't know what kind of training they get, but it's like this idea that they have to get through jury selection at breakneck speed, that it's like their one goal is to pick a jury as lightning quick as possible. And if that means cutting out how much time the attorneys have to speak with the jurors down to zero, then that's fine. I mean, I've never experienced what Vinoo's describing about no interaction, but I've had judges, and we've got a veneer, you know, a panel of 60 jurors, and the judge will go, "You've got 15 minutes, go ahead." And it's like, how are you supposed to possibly understand who these people are in that amount of time? And you're talking about huge consequences, right? You're talking about people perhaps going away to prison for the rest of their life, and you're given 15 minutes to try to figure out who of 6 out of those 60 people are just the wrong folks for this trial. And it's this judges with their constantly, "Come on, counsel, move it along." You know, we've all heard these questions. And how many times do we end up with hung juries, 10-2, 11-1, and all of that, in my view, is jury selection. A lot of these cases are being put on that have been lost or in jury selection, or already hung in jury selection. And it's like, here's something that is so important in the trial. Give the attorneys a little more time, a little more opportunity to make sure that they're getting the right jurors for this, and the rest of the trial might not end up in a deadlocked jury at the end. It's entirely frustrating to me. One point I wanted to make, I think it's such an interesting topic about whether or not you're looking for people who may have been victims of similar types of crimes in this case. And I think it's a weird thing because it can cut kind of both ways. One, yes, if you've got a person who is, you know, if you've got jurors who can say, "Well, listen, I've been a for real victim of this type of thing, and I do not believe that somebody would behave the way that these victims in this case are behaving." But in a case like this, where the allegations are so old, there's going to be a difficulty for the prosecution in getting people's heads wrapped around why did they wait so long, and why were they reluctant to come forward, and this idea of power dynamics, and why someone who had been the victim of the types of things that they're alleging here would not immediately run to the police. And a person who has been victimized that way might understand that, might understand all the other things at play as to why they wouldn't come forward immediately, and why they would be afraid of their accuser, and why they would be afraid of consequences. And so it's one of those things where it's a different case in a sense than your traditional kind of essay sort of case, that they might be looking for people that would have an understanding as to this late reporting is the way the defense is going to describe it, because the defense is going to try to say the only reason why this is late is they're now trying to take down a powerful person, and they're trying to get money out of this, and they're trying to make a name for themselves, or whatever it is. But it certainly wasn't that they were victimized, because if they had been, they would have gone to the police immediately.
Josh and the rest of the panel. So by the end of court proceedings today, there were 39 prospective jurors. Remember, they want to seat 18 with 6 alternates. 16 of those 39 moved forward in the process. That includes 10 men and 6 women, the ages spanning from 38 to 87, and the occupations include Man, you imagine being 87. Don't put me on a jury panel when
No,
yeah,
that's horrible.
yeah. When I'm 87, I want to be left alone. But among the occupations here, an American Airlines pilot sounds like a pretty good juror to me. A social worker, that would be Carr, my mom. Kitchen designer, physician's assistant, and it goes on and on. But Vinoo, there's this comment here from Lee T, who's a longtime STS viewer here. I wonder if they'd not choose me as a juror because of my negative views of hip hop and its core of misogyny and glorifying violence. Interesting comment. And I noticed people in the chat saying, wow, they ask very personal questions. Have you ever been SA'd? Have you ever been part of DV? When is a juror panel question too personal? Is there such a thing, or do they want it to be as personal as possible?
Well, they give the jurors, as I was saying earlier, they give the jurors the opportunity to come up to sidebar and not speak about it in front of everyone in the room. So just the lawyers, the judge, and the court reporter. So the answer is no, there really isn't a question that is too personal. I think with the commenter Lee T, if I'm saying the answer is simply, yeah, she can still get on, because the judge would say, hey, if you can be fair and impartial, right? If I tell you must be fair and impartial, you'll be fair and impartial, right? You're on. I'm telling you, that's what will happen. Sorry about my light. I have to censor. Give me a second.
It's all good. So without further ado, I'm actually going to, there you go, Vinoo, it's all good. I'm going to play, we've got a piece of sound here from Mark Geragos, who is a master at injecting himself into just about every high-profile case. This is no different. He's speaking to TMZ's Harvey Levin. Here we go. This is Mark Geragos on the upcoming Diddy trial.
They've recast it. They've said, no, about domestic violence. This isn't about prosecution. They've recast it. They've said, no, this isn't about domestic violence. This isn't about whatever was going on between the two of them. What it is you look at this to see the kind of coercive effect or the kind of control that he had over Cassie, and that you can now believe that he would be a violent person. It really, to my mind, is character assassination. I mean, I don't think they're going to run away from the fact that Sean has, I've known Sean for a long time. He has a violent temper. And especially, I think, when you combine it with kind of the drug use. But that isn't what he's charged with. As you said, how do you get over that when the jurors may shut down once they've seen the video?
There you go. I'm curious, Natalie, you're taken. By the way, Tenny Geragos, T-E-N-Y, is Mark Geragos' daughter. And guess what? She's on the defense team. But what do you make of that? That he's got a bad temper?
Yeah, if you have to defend me against allegations of trafficking and SA by saying, well, Natalie does have a terrible temper and she does like to take substances, if that's how you start a defense for me, no thanks. Please don't ever defend me again, because I don't think anything can make you look more guilty than someone saying that. There's so much that needs to be conceded here in the case with Diddy, right? That he was in a certain position before the charges got filed, and definitely before the video footage came out of him physically assaulting Cassie. He enjoyed a certain grace from the public based on the years of his persona. And no, that persona outside of the insiders was not of someone that was violent. He was he betrayed himself to be like this funny mogul who wore the shiny suit and rapped and did the Diddy bop, right? Like, he was never, ever serious, and no one ever took Diddy seriously. And so now it's interesting to see that the number one defense for him starts with, he has a negative reputation anyway, so don't pay attention to what's going on behind the curtain over here. It's an act of misdirection by the counsel who was just speaking. It really, really is. And it's quite sad to see him advance an argument for Diddy. And one more thing I have to say before you pass on to Joshua. Yeah. Vinoo, as you were talking about the judge-led voir dire, I was like, wow, that sounds crazy, because we don't call our voir dire process that. But as you started describing the particularities, that's exactly how Maryland does voir dire. We send proposed voir dire questions to the judge. The judge doesn't have to ask the questions that we ask. And as Joshua was pointing out, they try to speed you through it as quickly as possible, ask the questions as quickly as possible. And the rehabilitation is like so simple. It's just simply, despite the fact that you said that this is a sexual assault case, you hate sexual assaulters, you want to see every single sexual assaulter go to prison for life. Despite the fact that you said that, can you put all that aside and be fair and impartial in this particular case? And the person just goes, yeah. And they could be wearing a t-shirt that says like, I hate sexual assaulters on it. Right? Like the most biased person ever. But as long as they could say the magic words that I can remain fair and impartial, the judge is putting them on the jury. And now I have to use one of my peremptory strikes, which are limited, right? Like in Maryland, for a homicide, we get 20 peremptories. For a felony that's not a homicide, 10, and only 4 for misdemeanors and not, non-violent felonies, only 4 strikes. So yeah, the jury selection is extremely limited, and you don't get to really interact with your jury. And so no, you don't get like what you get with the New York, state court, right, where you get to feel your jury out.
Yeah. I want to just kind of round it out with the jurors, because we're getting information about some of them who could be actual jurors on this trial, and then we'll get to the defense case here again.
By the way, Geragos, the prosecution filed a motion today having the judge admonish Mark Geragos, because they're very bothered by his presence in court. They said during the course of jury selection, despite the presence of 7 defense attorneys and a jury consultant, the defense team appeared to consult with Mark Geragos and other members of the Geragos and Geragos law firm who were present in court. Mr. Geragos and his firm have a long-standing relationship with defendant, but neither he nor they or any members firm. So they're asking him to be admonished so that he doesn't make public statements. And they talked about what he had said. I think was that from Two Angry Men, his podcast.
Yeah, it's a podcast. That's exactly what it is. Yep.
Right.
Yep,
so they referenced that podcast, and they talk about Harvey Levin, and they say that they want to basically shut him down so he can't talk to the media.
Yeah, Ritter, why is he allowed in court? And I'm sitting here, I have to beg, borrow, and steal. I'm gonna have to like sneak my way in as a custodian through an air vent to get into that courthouse. And this guy, I like Mark Geragos, actually. He's come on my show, and he's like a character, this guy. But yeah, I don't know what he's doing in there. Obviously, his daughter is on the defense team, and he's helping out. But man, that guy, I don't know. He can't hide from the attention.
No.
Yeah, Josh, let me just run through this real quick, and then we'll get to the actual defense that they're dreaming up here. One juror said you can't unring the bell. This was a juror who faced the longest line of questioning from the judge. He admitted that he had multiple run-ins with the police in his early teens and 20s, and what he described as stop and frisk incidents in New York, which is a very sort of notorious policy. Prosecutors said that the man could struggle to be unbiased after negative experiences with police, but the defense argued that he's now 38 and he's grown up and he's changed. That's one person. Then you've got an American Airlines pilot and said that he himself was worried about being biased against Combs. Had no issues with law enforcement, but thought he would be biased, saying the music, the LA lifestyle, no offense, Josh, is very different than how I was brought up. You can't unring the bell. I can't unhear something I've heard. So these two cases, you got a guy had a run-ins with the law, and then an American Airlines pilot who hopefully never flew under the influence, but we don't know. And they're both sitting here being questioned by the judge. Very different types of people. Who do you like as a former prosecutor, and who don't you like?
If I'm picking for I mean, I think it's pretty obvious which side likes which, right? I mean, you've got a guy who's, flirting with the idea that he can't, be friendly to the police, which in a case like this, honestly, though, is not as big a deal. This is not a police case. This is a victim case. But the prosecution's not going to be happy with that. And then you got somebody else who says they're questioning themselves, having moments of existential crisis on whether or not they can be fair for P. Diddy. Obviously, that's somebody that the defense is going to want to get rid of. And this kind of goes back to Vinoo's point, is that the judge will have this, like Natalie said, one question rehabilitation of both of these people, and they'll remain on. And then it just becomes this game of who can make the other side burn through their peremptories the quickest. And it's about just trying to keep these people that aren't going to stay on the jury on the panel, so that the other side has to burn theirs, so that you can maybe have the opportunity to kick off, some remaining jurors when it comes down to those final few jurors. And it goes back to kind of this seething frustration I have with the way the judges run these voir dires many times. But yeah, I mean, I think end of the day, the smarter thing would, just find people who don't have problems. There's plenty of people sitting there. There's no reason to kind of make sure that you get it out of that first batch of folks. It's like, but this is the way they do it.
I wish I was one of those people without problems. I'm going to go back counterclockwise. So Natalie, 2 other jurors, and then I promise we're moving on to the defense here. One potential juror, he was dismissed today because he admitted that he got in trouble for marijuana possession 7 years ago. And the judge asked him, would it be difficult to not use marijuana through the course of the trial? To which he said, yes. And they said, thank you for your service. That's one. And then my personal favorite, because I can relate, there was an angst-ridden Catholic person. She said that her Catholic guilt, her anxiety, and so forth could impact her decision-making in trial. She also added to it that she has some sort of, some sort of intestinal issue that requires her to use the bathroom very frequently. And the federal case would move quickly and swiftly, and there would not be that many times for bathroom breaks. Is this all par for the course during voir dire? I mean, you must hear some of the wildest stuff, and you hear people telling you exactly, the truth. They're not holding back. So is this par for the course? You got a marijuana user, you've got a woman that might have irritable bowel syndrome, 2 different people, all sorts of problems.
That's exactly right. And people always wonder about like the truthfulness of the jurors. Now, for the most part, we're not going to get to investigate them or anything like that. But most people are motivated to show the truth, warts and all, because they want to get out of there, right? So any reason. So you're going to find out some very sensitive things about people. Like, no, I'm my mom's caretaker and I have to change her diaper. That's literally something I heard during jury. So I was like, okay, girl, you could have just left it at caretaker. We would have gotten And so, yes, jury selection can reveal a lot about people, and people also unknowingly reveal a lot about themselves, right? Because you do have a type of person that thinks that they're obfuscating, but they're not doing it very well. Like, it's quite clear that they're making something up or they're malingering. I'll give you a good example. A couple years ago, one of my favorite trial judges, we were doing jury. She has a lot of facial expressions. We're doing jury selection, and there's a civil attorney that's in the veneer, and he says, if her client doesn't testify, I just don't think I can be fair. And she's like, you're an attorney, that that's he's not required to testify, and you have to put that to the side, right? And he was just like, I can't put it to the side. And she says, you're an attorney. You know exactly what you're doing. Like, that what you're doing to purposely stay off this jury. And he insisted. And then he walked out and she reported him. She was mad. She was mad, yes, because she really believed that he was lying about his ability to remain fair and impartial. So, people pull all types of things, but mostly people are honest because they're trying to get out of there.
Yeah. IGG rocks. Ritter, what about this? Would a standing date to watch STS and Courtroom Confidential every day get us out of jury? What if you're an unabashed true crime junkie? Does that get you out, Ritter?
Yes, absolutely. And if you have problems from the judge, call me and I'll make sure that we get you kicked off of that jury.
I love it. I'm going to play another piece of sound here just because the COE picked this out. This is Diddy addressing the party at one of his now infamous white parties. Let's take a watch here. This is Diddy. What's going on? Why can I never pull this up now? What's going on?
Enjoy life. This is a celebration of life.
I'm taking it back.
We fed y'all. We gave y'all some drinks. Now it's time to enjoy life. This is a celebration of life. This is the legendary white party. It's the real white party. Make some noise if you've been here before. Okay. And to all the kids have like an hour left. So get extra comfortable, kids, because after that, y'all gotta go. It's a wrap for y'all, because this thing turns into something that when y'all get older, y'all don't want to come to, okay? So, let's just start to get our groove on a little bit. Then an hour, we put the kids away, it's all good. All right, DJ, let's hit it. Let's do it.
So considerate, Vinoo. He's putting the kids away in an hour. All funny at the time, but in retrospect, a little bit, I don't know, haunting. So Vinoo, let's dig into this a little bit. This amazing defense team is going to apparently go with the defense that Diddy was of the swinger lifestyle and was in a drug haze during a lot of this. And it was really just consensual acts because everyone here, however gazillion many accusers who've come forward, they consented and they're just promiscuous like Diddy. This sounds like a defense that is going to be ridiculous and could fall flat on its face. Is this their only choice?
Look, it may be their only choice. As far as it being ridiculous, if they can establish that, and I've been looking at the docket entries, and I can see that they are trying to preclude certain medical witnesses. They've also trying to include other medical witnesses who are probably going to back this up. And it seems like the judge has held off a final decision on some of these motions. But when you look at the charges, right, and what's set forth in now the third superseding indictment, all in the last month, they're talking about this racketeering activity, and if he's in a drug-induced state and this is his lifestyle, then the things that they're talking about, arson, kidnapping, force, fraud, coercion, these are what's listed in the original indictment. Well, then there's no enterprise. Right, so they're saying that this was the criminal enterprise that went out and caused this pattern of sex trafficking. But if these women were paid, for their time, and this was part of it, I think that you've got to really play up the consent angle, and I don't think this is as easy a case or a slam dunk. When I remember when this case came out, I was on some news program and talking about it, and it just seemed, again, and this is my view of the federal government. It's like they go in and they pick on a celebrity that they think they can get. That that video that came out open their eyes, and they look for a big media case and go after him. And so a lot of times these guys are targets. I actually don't think it's as ridiculous as they can. They probably need to, clean it up a little bit and focus more on the consent of these women and the financial success that they went through or got. But, they maybe could be all they have, but it could be a winning strategy.
Yeah. And Natalie, I just wanted to pick up on this. So again, they're going to come out essentially the defense, according to reports, and say, look, Diddy was a swinger, lived this promiscuous lifestyle. He was also on drugs. And to Vinoo's point, I heard someone giving analysis yesterday, and they said it's going to all come down to one word, this trial, and that is the word consent. But I mean, Natalie, where there's smoke, isn't there fire? And by the way, people keep referring to all these women, but there's plenty of men that are apparently involved in this too, who were coerced in this sort of thing. So your thoughts on this swinger / drug lifestyle as a defense here?
Yeah, I just think this is another example of people that are affiliated with the defensive side saying things because they have to concede them, right? But not realizing that that doesn't mean that he didn't do it or that he's not guilty or that the prosecution can't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, yeah, you're a swinger, you're hedonistic, and you take drugs. And also those lifestyles are risky for exploiters such as you taking advantage of people and trafficking them or essaying them or something like that. It's almost like he's conceding his presence. I'm conceding that I was there at the freak off, or I was there at the this, or I was there at the that, or yes, that is me on the video assaulting Cassie, but it doesn't mean that there wasn't consent, right? And I just feel like that's a really hard position to start from. So much ground has been ceded, that kind of like he has to cede. Like, I am not the fun party guy you thought I was. I am this hedonistic person that kind of went against the image that I had. But still, you must believe that everything I did with consent, even though other people are saying something to the contrary. It's just a tough position, but I think like it's not an impossible position, and it's not a ludicrous defense at all. I can't even think of one, because for example, when he talks about he was on drugs, voluntary intoxication can mitigate intent, right? Like, I did not knowingly, or I could not form the necessary mental intent to have premeditatedly done something, for example, because I just couldn't form that intent because I was too intoxicated. That can sometimes be a defense. So it's actually not an outrageous defense, although it's like we see what we saw with our own eyes. We hear the accounts. We've seen his own concessions of things. We know what we think happened in the real world, but can the prosecution prove it?
Yeah, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil and the video of Cassie Ventura going to be tough to get around, which I want to come back and ask Ritter about. But here's the second soundbite of who better to talk about baby oil than Josh Ritter. Here's Mark Geragos, second soundbite.
And Sean was not over anything sexual related. I think it changes it dramatically.
Over a cell phone.
Exactly. You got it. I mean, and you take a look at this, you slow it down, you take a look, and you're going to see that. And that really casts a different, I think, perspective on what was going on there. Look, nobody's justifying the hitting or the striking or the violence, but the fact remains the prosecution's the one who wants to reinterpret what that video is. They're the ones who are saying this is about sex or freak-offs or wild king nights, whatever you want to call what was going on in the privacy of their own bedroom. And the defense is going to say, no, that's not what it's about. Have you ever had a situation where your significant other took your cell phone? And does that take you from 0 to 60 really quick?
Ritter, I don't get it. I mean, he's basically, I don't know, like giving leeway here for violence because someone snatched a cell phone. I don't get it. My question to you is, and you've been in this position, you're the lead prosecutor on this case, and suddenly you got this powerhouse defense team, including Geragos' own daughter, and they say, look, Diddy is just a swinger, he's promiscuous, and he likes drugs. What's your argument to the contrary?
Yeah, he liked drugs, he liked swinging, and none of that is illegal, and he's not being charged with any of that. What he's been charged for is what took place behind the closed doors that didn't involve consent. And what he's being charged for is, years upon years of taking it much farther than just extravagant partying and swinging, and that was the, assault and worse of several different victims. And then up on top of all of that, continue to exploit and victimize them by putting them in fear that if they ever reported anything, so that he could continue to live this lifestyle and could continue to perpetuate it, and on and on and on. But I think that defense is going to become a central theme to all of this, is because, unless I'm completely wrong, I haven't heard about any of the actual assaults being caught on videotape. So if we're talking about people coming forward and saying, this is what happened to me, and even if those are lots of people saying that, the defense, I think, still has their strongest argument, and will be the most difficult hurdle for the prosecution, is to get past this idea of like, hey, you may not understand this lifestyle, you may not even agree with this lifestyle, but this lifestyle of swinging and taking drugs and drinking and all of this other stuff, it's not illegal though, and it's not what he's being charged with here. So sure, judge him for it, sure, find him to be morally deficient, sure, find him to be a scumbag, but don't find him to be a criminal, because they haven't proven all of that, because they don't have the evidence all of that except from the mouths of these people, and we will show you why those people are motivated to tell lies today. That, to me, is for the prosecution the biggest hurdle they're going to get past. Now, I think the way that they do that is obviously by the amount of people who are going to come forward, who may not know each other, will cross-corroborate each other, will tell remarkably similar stories to each other, having never met each other. And this will sound like an ongoing pattern that jurors are going to eventually go, well, what are the chances of all of these people coming forward saying remarkably similar stories?
Yeah. Natalie, this is interesting because we mentioned all these big celebrities, but we did not hear Usher or Justin Bieber. And these are two that, at least, in the media, have been reported to have possibly been Diddy's victims. Are you surprised that we didn't hear either of their names potentially?
Yeah, I'm not really, because I think their involvement with Diddy in any illegal context would have way predated Cassie. So I don't think that was a part of any of the allegations. So it would probably fall under like prior bad acts that have been uncharged, which are kind of difficult to get in.
Yeah. So Vinoo, and we'll wrap in just a couple of minutes, I promise. So, video. This is good. Vinoo, this is going to be, I'm glad you are, man, because I'm going to have you back. Obviously you're a formidable defense attorney, but then they've got something called videotape. They've got the Cassie tape, and I'm sure they have other tape that is going to illustrate things that the defense does not want illustrated. What do you do when you run up against this problem?
Well, look, just on that, I was checking the docket, and they're looking to, it seems like the government has withdrawn some video. I'm trying to figure out which one it was, but they've voluntarily decided they're no longer going to introduce one of these videos relating to victim 3, whoever that may be. And I was trying to look at some of the Geragos' daughter's motions, and most of it's redacted, and so it's like it's hard to figure out exactly what's going on. But look, in terms of the video, you have to be able to have somebody be able to explain things, and this is where they have this catch-22 situation. Perhaps Diddy takes the stand. It's not completely crazy, right? And he can maybe perhaps explain. I mean, look, they were visiting him every single day for months, because when I visit my client occasionally, I'd see that they were all visiting him, and they're with him, and maybe they've been prepping him to take the stand. It may be his only shot. The problem with that is that if he fails and the jury convicts him, basically that bulletproofs the appeal for the government, unless they've gone over the top, because they'll say that he put his credibility into issue and the jury rejected him, and so these other errors are now harmless. So, that's the catch-22. If he takes a stand and he's convincing, he can walk. But if he takes a stand and he loses, he's basically going to be in there for a minimum of 15 years and probably a lot longer.
This is two interesting comments. Yes, this is true. This was in the media. I'm assuming the government's going to have this video of these assaults being recorded. And by the way, the Alexander brothers, that's the lawyer, Natalie, the lawyer chick's pup. Everyone wants to meet your pup, which I know I have once before. But we are a dog friendly and cat friendly too.
Thank you.
Although I like dogs more than cats, but we're everything. IGG rocks. I clearly remember STS shows where Joel read info stating Diddy recorded assaults and used it as blackmail. That is reported to be true. I assume we will see it. Denzel, a smart man, he walked out of Diddy's party after 20 minutes and said he would never return and quoted, "Make sure you leave before the devil arrives." What did Denzel see? Who knows, man? He could be called. There's something like 190 names, celebrity names that have been bandied about. That's kind of crazy. It's a lot of people. That's basically Hollywood right there, Josh Ritter. My question to you, Josh, and then we'll get some final thoughts, is for the defense, which is the side that you are on now, you get video and you've got to cross-examine someone like a Cassie Ventura, or you've got to cross-examine someone else who's an alleged victim. I mean, you've got to be incredibly careful in terms of not victim shaming, not, taking out your own frustrations as a defense attorney and trying to get a not guilty verdict for your client. How do you toe that high rope, Josh Ritter? That's not a fun thing, I can imagine.
It is probably one of the most difficult things to do as a defense attorney, is when you're in a position where you have to cross-examine someone who is, already being seen as having been victimized by your client, is a person in a kind of, a lot of these are going to be, females who have been, dealing with the trauma of all of this in a kind of a delicate position. I mean, it's rough. But at the same time, you've got a client sitting there paying these attorneys a lot of money to get up there and defend them. And essentially you calling that person a liar. And that's what you have to do, is you have to find a very clever and delicate way to call this person a liar to their face without doing it in such a way that turns the jury off to you completely. And that is talk about a tap dance of a way to do it, because there are plenty, everybody on this panel can cross-examine someone and chop them apart. But, even if you win that battle, do you lose that war because you've turned the jury off to you so much in the way that you've done it? So how do you call this person a liar? How do you bring, attack their credibility without attacking them? It's difficult. It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, and not a job that I would want. Natalie, the lawyer chick, not to be confused with the lawyer she's smarter and prettier than every lawyer she's an attorney, she's a professional loudmouth, according to her, not me. She's a YouTuber, a political enthusiast, a feminist, a liberal, a wife, a defender of the public, and funny. And she's a dog lover on top of it. So you got to love her for loving dogs. Natalie, someone here said a narcissist always wants to talk. Is there a shot that we see Diddy take the stand here to explain his promiscuous lifestyle? And your final thoughts?
There's a chance. I mean, how do we know about this lifestyle, and how do we know that he was always intoxicated? I think really good attorneys, really strategic ones, will try their best to keep him off the stand and prove that defense up through other witnesses around, like people that were living around him. But if they can't get it that way, or if Diddy insists, yes, because he gets to make that decision. Ultimately, it's the defendant's decision. He will have the opportunity to testify. I think he's risky for it, because I think he has a very strong personality and he might want to talk.
Thank you. That would be fascinating. Vinoo Varghese, I'm planning to be in New York for this trial, so I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to get your digits from Steve Cohen, and I will also get baseball advice about how to torture my son more than I'm already torturing him. And appreciate you being here. First time for Vinoo. He is a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. By the way, if you look, it is dark. It's cold. It's rain. I don't know if it is actually, but I work in New York City. It is raining. And when you live in New York City, it's normal to be at work at 8:20. Vinoo will probably be there at 11:20. That's why I moved to Miami, where no one works and everyone just hangs out. Everyone sits at cafes outside, and that's why I now live here, because I have every reason in the world to do nothing, which is what I'm gonna do. And I'm not retired, by the way. Vinoo, your final thoughts here. By the way, he teaches at Harvard Law School's trial advocacy workshop, so he knows the goods when it comes to these trials. This is definitely an uphill battle for the defense, Vinoo. The feds have something like a 97.9, whatever the number is that's always tossed out. What is the 2% chance that the defense can pull this off? What would they have to do?
It may come down to him taking the stand and explaining himself and indicating that there isn't a enterprise here. This was his hedonistic lifestyle. It doesn't make him a criminal. Everyone was paid. Everyone was everything was consensual. The other angle, which they may be looking at, is these rulings and, looking to a lot of these trial judges make errors. And the question is, how bad of these errors are there? How, harmful are these errors? So if that's their angle, trying to win this on appeal, then he doesn't take the stand at all. So that is another aspect of it. And I'm sort of starting to see, the flurry of litigation in any type of case, it's intense. There's all these letters back and forth and all these rulings. And particularly in a case involving alleged sexual acts, what Josh was talking about with how you attack. Well, I presume that, that's what Geragos' daughter is partly why she's there, because she's probably going to be the one who's going to do most of the attacking. And, you can do it if you're, as a male defense attorney, if you have other reasons. And in most cases, when you're dealing with a run-of-the-mill thing, you're not dealing with a person with deep pockets like Diddy. So I think you can go after these people because they all want their payday. And I think that could be compelling.
Vinoo, what's Diddy paying for this defense team as a whole? What if you had to guess? If you had to put a lump sum number, what are they paying for this? Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, look, I would imagine he's got a bunch of attorneys. He had other attorneys, some of whom have left. One attorney left, Tony Rico, who I know. And I would imagine, you're talking a good chunk of his fortune is there. And I imagine a good chunk of his fortune has been also put away for appeal. So, I think that these guys are probably in it for the long haul. And, there could be some issue that makes its way to the Supreme Court. Who knows?
Wow. Vinoo, is there such a thing? Are lawyers ever accused? I'm just asking this for a friend. Ever accused of price gouging? Is there such a thing for an attorney? Or could I just charge Diddy $75 million and say, look, that's the going rate for Diddy?
So that's an interesting question. The answer is
he's answering it carefully. He's going to have Ritter represent him. Go ahead.
I just think that.
By the way, Vinoo lives in a building, and he actually lives in the entire building in Lower Manhattan. It's like the whole building is his. Go ahead, Vinoo.
So, look, a case like this is exhausting, and to defend it properly, it's going to cost millions. I would imagine millions and millions, especially with all the people he's got.
The answer is that it costs whatever they could agree him to pay.
Yeah, like you can only charge, like $19 for a dozen eggs, and then someone's going to come by and say, "Look, 21 is too much." But a defense attorney could be like, "It's $100 million for the dozen eggs, and if you want to get them from me, you got to pay the $100 million."
Or get to walk-in. That's what I cost. Yeah, if you want me, this is what it costs.
Wow, I guess it's supply and demand. I have obviously done everything in life completely wrong. I'm reminded of that every day in Miami, where I see it firsthand. But Josh Ritter, to you, he is, for those who do not know, not just a prosecutor, but an LA Prosecutor of the Year, a current criminal defense attorney, and host of the incredibly popular Courtroom Confidential, of which I purchased a shirt, and it is incredibly is that a Courtroom Confidential shirt? It is. I have that shirt, but in a slightly different color, and
Nice.
I absolutely love it. I'm wearing it to the gym. Josh Ritter.
Can I get one?
Yeah. Vinoo, we're gonna get when I see you in New York, Vinoo, I want to bring it in. I'll bring it to you. Ritter, how does this go down? I mean, Diddy's got a 2% chance or less. He is a 1%er. Does he have a shot here, a shot in hell? What would it take?
The federal government is very particular in the cases that they charge and bring. And usually by the time they indict someone, they've done a tremendous amount of homework and they've put a tremendous amount of resources behind it. You're basically talking unlimited resources behind it. And this case, they knew the person they were planning on taking down, and I don't think they want to end up embarrassed in a case like this. So I think that there's a lot we don't know, and there are probably plenty of people who are willing to come forward and testify against him. I will point out, this is the U.S. versus Sean Combs, one person, and they've indicted that he was part of a criminal enterprise. Well, that means that everybody else involved in that enterprise is likely cooperating with the government because they're not on the other side of that U.S. versus. So I think that this is a pretty strong case that the government has, not having heard evidence, right? I mean, we've heard very little, but it's just my kind of gut instinct is that they've probably got the goods if they've taken a bigger case like this against Sean Combs.
And does he take the stand, Josh?
I think they'll probably prepare him and see how things play out, and you'll know at some point whether or not he wants to throw a whole Hail Mary like getting up on the stand.
And a final question. Are we going to see somebody testify that's not on that list, who's out of left field but a big name?
I don't think so. I think they're probably on the list if they have a chance of testifying.
There you go. There you go. Vinoo echoing that. Huge thanks to Josh Ritter, Natalie, the lawyer chick, and Vinoo Varghese. Vinoo, new friend of the show. Vinoo, will you come back for other stories?
I'd be thrilled. Thank you. It'd be fun. So much fun.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back. Thank you to everybody. Reminder, Shanna Gardner tomorrow, 9 a.m. live. We're going to do a 12:30 show. I'm taking my boy to the Dodgers game. The best thing about Miami is you can get Yankees here, but you can get Dodgers second row seats in Miami for like 10 cents because no one goes to the game. So I'm taking my son.
Can buy that Dodgers jersey you owe me there.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get it signed by Shohei because I'm going to take my kid like 2 hours early, and then we'll probably leave at the top of the first. So there you go. I'll be there tomorrow. But so 12:30 show as a result of that. Love you, America. Love you, Los Angeles. Love you. Are you in Maryland, Natalie?
Maryland.
Look, I remember that. Love you, Maryland. And of course, the great city and state of New York, my former home. Shout out to Vinoo for joining us for the first time. Justice for the victims here, and Diddy's got a uphill battle. See you tomorrow. Stick around 1 second.